my friends and parishioners. I'm happy to be with you again for the 5th Sunday of Easter's reflection. The theme for today is Trust in God, but be wary of men, and is from the Gospel of John chapter 14 verse 1 to 12. And indeed, we all know that in difficult times, all of us are struggling to find faith. All of us are struggling to trust. Indeed, the question is, when we are drowning in the storms of life and when we need help, whom do we trust? And that is a very important question for us to recognize that perhaps it is not someone that you trust if that person lets you down, if that person takes you for a ride, and if that person consistently plays you out. And so we ask ourselves as we hear the opening lines and words of Jesus, do not let your hearts be troubled, trust in God and trust in me. And so these words tell us that Jesus invites us to have faith in Him. Jesus invites us to turn to Him in our trials and difficulties in life, and especially in moments of doubts, in moments of despair. The Lord is telling us that He is with us. And so if there is anything that we need to also ask ourselves to be situations when we find ourselves that can be testing. Supposedly, if you have a caller who comes and calls you without an identification for him, and you would say, "Excuse me, who are you?" And then if the reply comes and he says, "I'm Jesus Christ," certainly you might be surprised. And if you happen to be in certain countries where that name is commonly used, then you might not be surprised. But if it is not, you probably will be scratching your head. And if the caller calls a second time and you say, "Who are you?" and he says, "I'm Father Colin Tan," then you might be a little bit suspicious because you know that he doesn't sound like Father Colin Tan. Remember, your voice is a unique signature. And if the third time he calls again and you say, "Who are you?" and he says, "I'm the President of the United States," then you might come to the conclusion that this person has something wrong with him. And he might say, "I think you are mad." And if he were to reply you, and you might be surprised by what he would say, he will reply by saying, "You are right." And indeed, you might be also taken aback. Perhaps this man agrees with your statement that he is mad. Or it could be that the President of the United States is mad. And I think the question is that there may be some presidents who are mad. The question that you ask yourself is, which one? But coming back to the question, whom do we trust? We need to then know that there are criteria in which we enter into the authentication of a truth claim. A truth statement can be verified by 3 criteria. Number 1, consistency, and number 2, truthfulness, and the third criteria is about whether that truth claim is reasonable. And so if we say that if a truth claim is consistent, must be consistent from the beginning, the middle, and the end. If the person is changing his story all the time from the beginning to the middle to the end, as in the caller who changes his identity all the time, then of course you become more suspicious. And we also know that the second criteria is about how we have to be truthful. To be truthful is, of course, to know that we live by certain values, that we abide by certain principles such as honesty and integrity, and not resort to lying. Otherwise, people would not trust us. We will lose their trust and their confidence. And the third criteria about being reasonable would be to say that if anyone makes a statement does it stand to reason? Is it reasonable for a person to make such a claim or such a statement? And we know that it is not reasonable if they resort to secrecy or to coercion or to pressure. And we know that scams often use such tactics to cheat people of their money, to tell them to give their accounts immediately, and that very often they will be using fake identities, claiming to be custom officers from China, claiming to be officials from the CPF, and so on. And so we have to be wise enough not to be deceived by these people who makes false claims. And so if we apply these three criteria to the claim of Jesus, how does Jesus measure up? We can hear what he says. You must believe in me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Believe in the evidence of this work, if for no other reason. This is quoting from John chapter 14, verse 10. And so that is something that we will ask ourselves. Jesus is inviting us to know that to see him is to see the Father, and that we should believe him because he does not deceive, neither can he be deceived. Jesus continues to tell the truth consistently from the beginning, the middle, and the end. He is in fact the one who tells us in our gospel reading also, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And so Jesus is the one who will show us the way to life, who will show us the way to the Father. He has been consistent with his messaging, that he has come to do not his will but the will of the Father. But most of all, he has also fulfilled the promise that he has said, I will rise again on the third day. And so this is the claim of Jesus that at times may be beyond scientific evidence, beyond even the ability to comprehend and reason, but it is a call for us to have faith, to believe, and to trust in Jesus. And so, my dear friends, this is where we are. We know that Jesus tells us in no uncertain term that we have to continue to believe in the work that he does. And to believe is to then to trust and to know that God will always lead us to life and give us everything that we need to fulfill our life and our mission on earth. So let us continue to place ourselves in the loving hands of God. And years back, even before I became a Catholic, I would be using this prayer of consecration to the Sacred Heart. Maybe you know this prayer. I can invite you to join me to say this prayer if you do know of it. And it goes like this. O most Sacred Heart of Jesus, I place my trust in you, in all, for all, and in spite of all. It is a beautiful prayer that we know Jesus will always be with us to console us, to comfort us, and to give us the assurances of faith to know that we are not alone. And so, my dear friends, I invite you during this time to continue to spend time to pray, to reflect, and to be with Jesus, and to remember that as long as we live in this world, continue to trust in God, but be wary of men, and especially if they make fantastic claims. Test them out through the three criteria that I've given you. And so now I would like to invite you to reflect on two questions, and these questions we put on the screen for you. The first is, we learn to trust those who raise us up and provide for our well-being, namely our parents. Have you said, thank you mom, thank you dad for bringing me up to be who I am today? If you have done so, very well. Perhaps you can still affirm them and to put it across to them in a different way. And if you have not thanked your parents and yet, then I would suggest that it's never too late to do so. The second question for you to reflect on is this: is there a friend whom you can trust totally and know that you can depend on that person in times of need and crisis? Pray for that person to give thanks to God for him or her. And lastly, you may turn to Jesus and to say a prayer to him: Jesus, I trust in you. So, and on that note, let us continue to pray with Pope Francis as he invites us to pray also with Mary for protection for ourselves, for all the victims of the COVID virus, and also for all the healthcare workers throughout the world. So the prayer will be put on the screen. Do join me to say this prayer. O Mary, you always shine on our path as a sign of salvation and hope. We entrust ourselves to you, health of the sick, who at the cross took part in Jesus' pain, keeping our faith firm. You, salvation of the Roman people and of the whole world, know what we need, and we are sure you will provide, so that as in Cana in Galilee, we may return to joy and to feasting after this time of trial. Help us, Mother of Divine Love, to conform to the will of the Father and to do as we are told by Jesus, who has taken upon himself our sufferings and carried our sorrows, to lead us through the cross to the joy of the resurrection. Under your protection we seek refuge, Holy Mother of God. Do not disdain the entreaties of we who are in trial, but deliver us from every danger, O glorious and blessed Virgin. Amen. So thank you for being with me for this Sunday's reflection. Keep safe, keep well, and keep on trusting in God and in Jesus Christ our Lord. God bless all of you.